Thanks, Dixon and Ton. My name is Steve Yena, and Assistant Director in the Graduate College IT and Data team. I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves.
I'm Ferenc. I go by Zan. I'm the Tavo developer for the data team.
Hi, everybody. I am Sean Sederstrom. I am a business analyst with the Graduate College.
So thank you again, everyone, for taking time out of your day to listen to our presentation on accelerated bachelor's and master's programs, or what we'll commonly refer to throughout the presentation as 4+1. So we're excited to be here today to share a little bit about this. Our goal today is that everyone leaves with a better understanding of what 4+1 is, an understanding of better knowledge of what the 4+1 business process is, insight into how to identify the 4+1 populations, and we'll hopefully gain some tips and tricks on a little bit of Tableau dashboard. So with that, let's dive in and we'll just do a quick overview of the agenda. So we'll do a brief overview of 4+1, give some background history of what it is. Then we'll do a deep dive into the business process and tools that support 4+1. We will discuss best practices for how to identify 4+1 populations and share a few existing reports that we have that may be helpful for your maybe day-to-day work. And then we'll unveil a 4+1 dashboard that we've been working on that's still in beta, but it's about a couple of weeks out from rolling out to the ASU-wide community. And then we'll take everyone through some tips and tricks in Tableau and how to build a bump chart. And then we'll save time at the end of the presentation to answer questions. You're more than welcome to go ahead and post them on the chat. I know Ton and Dixon will both be monitoring that, and we'll definitely have time at the end to answer. So a little bit about the Graduate College. We're an enterprise office that's made up of about 45 FTE. We have a variety of different offices that range from graduate student resources and curriculum and format to postdoctoral affairs office and graduate initiatives. This is just a quick example of some of the student-facing areas that we support students. So things like merit and needs-based awards, so RATA-ships. We have a student-facing application called the Interactive Plan of Study that helps students plan their degrees and coursework throughout their graduate program. We do have a presentation on that tomorrow at the Data Conference at 9:30. If anyone's interested in learning more about that, we'll do a deep dive into IPAWS, demystify some of the tables and how to identify the different populations, and then talk about some of the new features that we've rolled out in the last year around graduate staff advisor assignments, moving to an online defense practice with response to COVID, and some progress audit tracker. So that's my one plug for today. And then if you want to keep going, Zan. So a little bit about our team briefly. So we're the Graduate College Data and IT team. We're a small but mighty group. I like to think we wear a lot of different hats. We're made up of primarily of analysts and developers. So we do things like gathering requirements for a variety of different projects, testing, and the next day we might be writing different types of reports for SQL, as well as developing PeopleSoft applications, creating Drupal applications, so things like the format advising tool, which allows students to format their thesis or dissertation, as well as doing curriculum for the university for graduate programs. So any new graduate program that comes through, we have to do the coding for the curriculum and course requirements. Now on the analytics side, we've built some capacity in the last couple of years. Our bread and butter in the past has been the graduate student progress site. So it's really more of an operational data set that staff can get really student ID level data on a large array of really tailored graduate data points. We have about 100, 150 data points that are available. And then last year we rolled out the Graduate College dashboard, which is really meant to be an interactive suite of dashboards that provide program leadership a 360 level of a graduate student. So at the point that student's an applicant, all the way through graduation and everywhere in between, as well as some support around RATA data, graduate faculty, and postdoctoral scholars. So that's a little bit about our team in a nutshell. And then if you want to go to the next slide, Zan, a little bit about just briefly about the graduate population. So enrollment was over 22,000 for fall. We have over 500 graduate programs with students in them at this point. 14 different colleges. We provide support and training for over 400 support staff. We have about a little over 3,500 RA and TAs this semester and a little over 300 postdocs. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Sean to take us through the 4+1 journey.
All right. Hi, everybody. So, of course, we're going to get into the kind of data and technical side of this here in a minute. But I wanted to do, excuse me, some quick level setting here so we're all familiar with what is a 4+1 program and kind of the background for this. Suzanne? So 4+1s were actually first introduced at ASU in 2002, which is actually, I'll be honest with you, it was earlier than I realized until I began researching for this presentation. So they've been around for some time now. The technical implementation first began in 2007 in PeopleSoft, which of course was when PeopleSoft was introduced at ASU. So it actually goes back to the beginning of PeopleSoft here. The automation for it was first developed by graduate admissions at ASU, which began in 2008. And then the 4+1 applicant tracking tool, which we're going to go into in some detail here, and implemented in 2014. And then this year, 2020, the graduate college has now taken over the technical components of 4+1. So that being the accelerated applicant tracking tool, at the system automation and the data management. So we have now started the process of one, that transfer of ownership, and two, we've actually started some new development for it and revamping some of the elements. So we're just getting started with that process. So there will be certainly more on that to come, but I just want to give you guys some of the background on what 4+1s have looked like at ASU over time. Sam? Okay, so what is a 4+1 program? So what you're looking at right now is kind of the typical life cycle for a student going through from year one in their bachelor's all the way through their master's program. So a 4+1 program is referred to as 4+1 because the intent is that a student is able to receive both their bachelor's and a master's degree in as little as 5 years. And the way that that's accomplished is that it is a special arrangement, special approval for these programs for students to begin taking graduate courses while still in their undergraduate program. And then they are actually allowed to share those hours between both programs. So that they double count those hours, both for the undergrad and the graduate side. So thinking about a typical master's program, which is as few as 30 credit hours, if you come into a master's program having already completed 12 credit hours, that's almost half the program, which is what allows them to then complete the master's in as little as 1 year. So that's how we get the total of 5, and that's where the name 4+1 comes from. Next. Okay, and then just really briefly, I wanted to touch on how 4+1 programs are created and approved. So there are a actual set list of criteria that you see on the left there. These were the exact criteria that were established when these programs were first developed at ASU in 2002. So those elements are submitted as a proposal by the academic unit. There's generally some form of internal approval within the academic unit. Then it comes to graduate college for approval. And then once approved, it actually goes to the registrar's office, who are responsible for the initial implementation and creation of the 4+1 program in PeopleSoft. Okay, so this is where we, the graduate college, kind of take over from a technical perspective. So we have a number of system automations that we run. We use a combination of Kubu's query-based updates, which is an app engine that was developed some time ago that does some system automation for us. And we also this year developed a new custom app engine that kind of takes over some of the manual processes that had been done previously. If you're familiar with 4+1 programs in the past, what I'm going to describe moving forward may not be exactly what you're familiar with. And the reason for that is that in the process of taking over ownership, we have actually also updated the business process. So as time has gone on, we've realized that there's actually a number of, as systems what tends to happen in the system, we've ended up with data issues, processing errors, pretty large issue with orphan data. So we realized it was time for a change. So what you're looking at now is actually the new process. It's fairly streamlined compared to the old one. And I think that it's definitely going to be something that's going to be a major improvement moving forward. So I'm going to go into some of the detail for that in a minute. I think next we have the pairing table. So this is kind of where it all starts. So like I said before, when the program is approved, it then goes to the registrar's office to actually be implemented and created in PeopleSoft. So there is a custom page in PeopleSoft to be able to do that. And then there's also, of course, the custom table that backs that. So they're entered here. It is basically a pairing between the undergraduate and graduate plan codes. So those are linked together, and a unique accelerated degree ID is generated for that. And then that is what's used as the key moving forward to be the unique identifier for these programs. Okay, so from a functional perspective, so our general users, so that's typically going to be academic advisors, both from the undergrad and graduate side. This tool was designed with actually a dual purpose. It is designed both as the name would suggest, a tracking tool, so that academic units can track a student's progress throughout the 4+1 program, but it's also designed as a recruiting tool. So we can go to the next slide. So if you see here, some of the data elements that we pull in some of the kind of metrics that you might use for recruiting. So that would be things like GPA, progress as far as credit hours, transfer hours. Typically, a 4+1 student is expected to meet certain thresholds by the time they're invited to actually apply for the program. So this allows units to go in, see these different metrics, different criteria. They can search on these. And then when they see students that are meeting or reaching those criteria, they can then go in and enter them as either a prospect or a candidate, which then of course allows them to further track the student. It also drives messaging to MyASU to give visibility and to invite that student to either contact the advisor for more information or to apply directly to the program. Next. So this is, again, just a view of when you actually go into an individual student. A lot of the same information here, but this is where the advisor would actually be able to track that information, add notes, and you're going to see, of course, a lot of that same metrics that we use to determine if the student would actually be qualified for the 4+1 program. Okay, so one of the questions that we get a lot in terms of 4+1 is, how do I actually identify these students? You know, it's a fairly unique student population because we're tracking both in undergrad and graduate. But kind of the primary way, at least from the graduate perspective, is going to be the student groups. So typically when they're still in their undergrad, it would either be the tracking tool table, or once they've actually been admitted into a graduate program, we then add the student groups. So if you're trying to identify 4+1 students in that population, this is actually where I would direct you, is to look for these student groups. The GRAI student group is going to show you all of your active 4+1 students. And then if you want to look at historical data, students that have completed the program, the GRAG shows you all the graduated students. So that's definitely one of the main ways that you're going to be able to identify those students. This is just an example of the MyASU messaging that we place on that's driven by the tracking tool. So one of the KUBUs, one of the query-based updates that I mentioned before, places checklist and checklist items onto the student's file. And that's what drives this messaging onto MyASU. So there are certain criteria that we look for, primarily. One, they have to be in the tracking tool, so they have to be in that table. And then it also is looking at the number of credit hours that they have completed. The intention behind the credit hours is that typically we would expect a student who's participating in the 4+1 program to begin taking graduate courses in their junior or senior year of their undergrad. So that 90 credit hours is typically when a student is entering their junior year. So that's kind of the logic behind it. That's why we use those thresholds. Okay, so again, like I mentioned before, this is kind of how we do the system automation. So there are actually 3 different processes that run to do this automation for us: 2 KUBUs, and the custom app engine that we created earlier this year. So the KUBUs update the student groups as well as the checklist items. And then the app engine that we created, that our team created, actually does 2 things. One, it updates the student's graduate requirement term. So the reason we did that, again, if you remember, I said that we're moving to a business process. The old process was that the student would actually apply to a term while still to the graduate program for a term while still in their undergraduate program. So typically the term that they're in their junior year of their undergrad. That once admitted to the graduate program, that program would actually be deactivated. And then when they are ready to return and do the +1, so once they graduate from the undergrad, that program would then be reactivated. So that is actually where we saw a lot of the errors in the process come up, was as part of that deactivation reactivation process. So we decided it was time to move away from that, find a different solution. I guess you could say that was certainly one of the data monsters that we were slaying, was how to manage that process without the deactivation process. And the whole reason that got in place was that students live in both an undergrad and a department at the same time. So figure out how to manage that. And this is the solution that we came up with. So now the new process, instead of applying and being admitted to the graduate program while still in the undergrad, they will actually now be applying directly to the term they will be starting the graduate program. So from a data perspective, they will actually look very much like a normal student transitioning from a undergrad into a graduate program. So it should be the term generally immediately following their undergrad graduation. But as part of that, we also needed to update the requirement term, because that was actually done manually under the old process. So the app engine was created to be able to do that. The other thing the app engine does is we also added system automation for the tracking tool and the tracking tool table. Previously, that was done entirely manually. So now, once a student is admitted into a graduate program, their status in the tool will be updated to students. Once they graduate from the program, they'll then update automatically to graduated. It will also automatically withdraw the student from that table, or we'll add a withdrawn status to the table if they are no longer eligible for the 4+1. So from a data integrity and student tracking perspective, this is a new big enhancement for us, because previously, like I said, that was done entirely manually, and it was really done pretty irregularly. So it wasn't really reliable data. So now that we have this automation, that should make the data much more reliable so that we can actually use that both for student tracking purposes and for reporting and metrics. Next. Okay, so I think that concludes my part for the kind of technical and business process piece of this. Please do let us know if you have any questions, put them in the chat, or we're going to reserve some time at the end. And now I'm going to hand it over to Zan to talk about the reporting and data side of it.
All right, so here is just some examples of where we put up our reports on this one for the 4+1. So it's just a real simple way where, you know, advisors or deans or anybody who wants access to information can view it on a student level for each individual student at on the 4+1. This is a really simple Tableau used for just making a table. Anyone who knows tables aren't its forte, but it can do them. And then here's where our curriculum reports are for all the different degree pairings offered. And then here's how that table looks. So it shows, you know, going from left to right chronologically, how their undergrad programs, and then pairs up with their graduate programs. And some of these also have like student totals and numbers. Can't fit it all in one screenshot. All right, so I'm going to show you what our current 4+1 overview dashboard looks like. As Steve mentioned earlier, it is in beta, so it's not quite perfect yet. Give you an overview of it, and then give you a demonstration on how to create a bump chart, which is not a native chart for Tableau, but you can make Tableau do a lot of things. All right, here actually. So many tabs open. And of course it logged me out. There we go. Okay. So here is our current 4+1 dashboard. All right, so it just gives kind of an overview of, you know, how many degrees awarded over time. As you can see, it just keeps increasing and increasing. Here's actually the cumulative total, about 1,700. That is a little chart showing on the college and department level. You'll see a theme here that engineering dominates this. It's because they were very much not only early adopters of the 4+1 program, but they also encourage it. I myself looked at doing an engineering degree at one point, and all the advisors immediately said, you know, hey, here's a 4+1, here's a 4+1, here's a 4+1. You know, just get your master's on your way out the door, so by the time you hit the workforce, you're already there. So they encourage it very strongly in their student population. All right, so here we can see an overview of the program pairings. So you have the graduate college. This is the undergrad and then the graduate actual pairing. And scroll over here, you can see, you know, how many active undergraduate students, how many active grad students, and historically how many people have graduated. There are a lot of programs that have been set up that don't have anybody who's ever been in them or ever graduated from them. Sometimes that's a byproduct of they create a bunch of pairings in case anyone wants to use them. Thunderbird has created very many that haven't been used yet, but they're all there ready and waiting for the students. This is also a useful tool for deans or directors or even staff and faculty level if they want to make strategic decisions about 4+1 or just get a pulse on their college and see what kind of programs they're offering, how that compares to other colleges. Here we have just by college, and as you see here, engineering just has been king of 4+1 from the get-go and doesn't like it's going to be competing with them anytime soon. Now, here is the bump chart that I created. Currently, it's for the admits to the 4+1. So what this is it's a rank order chart showing that, in each year, who had the most people admitted to 4+1 programs. Again, still in beta, but one of the nice functionalities here, if we, for example, just wanted to look at engineering, and then I could dive down to the department level of engineering and see how each different engineering department is doing over time in their admits. So now I'm going to show you a quick tutorial on how to make bump charts in Tableau. So here's what it currently looks like. When we first start, I'm looking at how many students are admitted. So I have to create a calculated field using empl_id, counting that distinctly, and then using command rank unique. So it assigns it a rank order of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, who has the most. Yeah. Then I'm going to use that to create just a simple line graph. The reason it's doing this spiking is because it's spring versus fall, and different semesters, different terms obviously have far more admits than others. All right, then I create a parameter. So using 1, 2, 3, so I can select college, department, and program. So that's that selector that I showed where I can change how much I'm drilling down into the data. All right, then I create a calculated field that uses that parameter. So I'll call it detail level, and just a case of 1, 2, 3, college, department, program. I'm going to use between the parameter and this calculated field is pretty much the crux of everything for this graph. All right, I'm going to use that newly created field detail level, put it on the color so it breaks it up. Yes, currently it looks pretty convoluted, but we're going to clean this up as we go. All right, one important thing is to tell it how it's calculating stuff. We want it to calculate everything on that detail level. So it's telling it, if we're selecting college, department, or program, that's how it's going to be ranking stuff. Once we select that, it becomes noticeably cleaner, and we get all these distinct fields. Now, the reason it's looking kind of odd so far is because we have number 1 on the bottom. That just for a standard graph makes sense. But when you're ranking stuff in order, we usually put the top person on, the number 1 person on top. So I'm going to edit the axis and select reverse axis. Now it's looking something like this. So again, now we have engineering on top here. All right, for these purposes, I'm just going to filter everything just to fall. So we're consistent, but I could also do everything just for spring. All right, now I'm going to duplicate it. So the way you do that is you hold Control, click on rank, drag it over, and you're going to duplicate it because that bump chart is actually 2 graphs stacked on top of each other. All right, and here you select dual axis. So you right click on one of them, dual axis, and that'll put them on top of each other. So now we get something like this. The reason it's a mirror image of itself is because the one on the left, the original, we did a reverse of the axis. This one we haven't done that yet. So I'm going to right click on it and select Synchronize Axis. That makes sure that they're not only both inverted, but that all their numbers line up exactly, so they're not off center by a little bit, because Tableau will do that sometimes. All right, and once I stack them on top of each other, I'm going to filter it so it only looks at the top end number. In my case, I'm going to choose 12 because there's 12 colleges that use the 4+1. And this doesn't affect the college graph. This affects it. So when I select department or program, I don't see 50 programs, 100 programs, because at that point it's just noise on the graph. So again, I click on it, compute using that detail level. And here's where I select it. 12 is the max for the colleges, but by actually setting it that way, that's what forces it for the other options. All right, now basically at this point, I have 2 line graphs stacked on top of each other. While Tableau does have an option to make little dots along the line graphs, you can actually make them very big. So I select one of the graphs under the mark sections until it circles. So now we have these two graphs stacked on top of each other, one's circles, one's lines. Do a little formatting, make the lines thicker, add a label for the rank. And I get something that looks more like this, which is easier and more useful. Okay, and then because the chart, what it's actually displaying could be, as I said before, college, department, or program, I created a dynamic title for it so that as you change your selection, the title updates. So this is just the base title I put in. And I click right here before the apostrophe, insert, and then insert the detail level selector. So now I go back to my chart. If you look up here, it currently says department. If I change and go to college, that automatically updates. So that way, in case you take a screenshot or anything else, there's never a confusion as to what specifically you're seeing on that chart. All right, and that's the Tableau portion of this.
So where are we going for the future? We are in the early stages of gathering some requirements for some enhancements to the 4+1 tracking tool in PeopleSoft based on some great feedback I know we've gotten from many of the advisors, and I think probably some are on this presentation. So thank you. We're looking at some additional 4+1 outreach automation. So how do we do some communication in a more effective way for this? Additional 4+1 reports. And then, like Zan showed, the 4+1 dashboard, we'll be rolling that out here in the coming weeks, putting the finishing touches on that. And then looking at how is there ways to integrate the iPods or interactive plan of study with some of the 4+1 features, since we know students are either sharing undergraduate coursework with their graduate coursework, and how do we identify those populations and those students. So that's kind of a really brief overview of what our plans are for coming months and into 2021. So with that, do we have any questions?
Yeah, it looks like we just got one from Nicole asking to share that calculated field for rank in the chat. And we are recording these sessions. I think that tutorial, that great tutorial, thank you so much, Zan. We'll probably edit that one down if anyone else wants to use that rank viz in Tableau. And we'll find a way to share that through the analytics portal.
I believe we'll also, and Dixie, I think we'll also be sharing presentations on it.
Sorry, sharing the presentation recordings?
Well, the recordings and the actual slides.
Oh, the slides as well. Yeah, we always try to have those two links there. So I'll connect with you guys afterwards on that.
You'll have Zan's great tutorial either way.
Cool.
Question about the dashboard. Once it's rolled out, I know I'd use like a report in analytics with 4+1 students about a year ago.
We lose, was that Jessica?
Looks like it.
All right, we'll have to come back to her. Anyone else with questions? We've got 10 minutes here, so plenty of time to hang out. You have any questions for this great graduate college data team? I know they put out a ton of content and do a lot of really cool enterprise stuff. But yeah, we'll wait to see if Jessica can rejoin us.
All right, well, if there's no more questions, we're going to stick around either way. But thank you, everybody, for coming, and let us know if we can do anything for you. Have any questions?
I actually have a question. I'm wondering our participants here who are still sticking around, who has done a 4+1? Do we have any? How long has that been around? I don't know if that was covered in your initial timeline.
Hey, you weren't watching my presentation, Dixon. Yeah, so they've been around actually since 2002, but they really have kind of taken off in probably the last 5 years or so.
I'd love to see some other college usurp engineering eventually. I know Nancy Dixon wouldn't want to see that, but.
Looks like we got Jessica Jones back.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened. I got kicked out, but yeah, essentially, will there be a way for in the dashboard to see folks, like if I'm wanting to know, like, hey, who's starting the master's level piece this semester?
I don't believe we have anything like that currently. Are you looking for aggregate totals or just like individual students?
What I would use it for is individual students to email them like, hey, congratulations, you're starting your graduate classes this semester. Here are the graduate academic support resources we have if you would like to take advantage of that for free.
Gotcha. There is not currently anything, but I'm always open to new ideas. I know we have a report for just active 4+1 students that are just, current students on the student level.
Yeah.
Creating one that shows like only incoming for the upcoming semester, or just maybe a filter for that. That's a pretty good idea. I will definitely take that under advisement. I like it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think to speak to that point too, I think, and let me know if this would be something that would be helpful. We could also do a report for 4+1 students that are still in the undergrad portion, but have now enrolled for graduate level courses. So that would kind of be the indicator that they're actually intent and moving forward with the graduate portion.
Yeah, that would be, it's just a subgroup of population our department has thought, like, how can we provide some support for? So we've very tentatively put our foot into those analytic tools to try to find those students and reach out to them.
I should mention, I just dropped it in Slack, but if you ever have any access problems with getting to the great content that they're putting out there in the analytics portal, that would be Ton and I supporting that with the other UTO data success team members. So we have a Slack channel you can use, or you can just email analytics@asu.edu to get any of that figured out. I know they have a few different groups out in the portal, and they're making such great enterprise content. There are a lot of people accessing it. So if you ever run into any problems or your coworkers, do make sure they get to our team. Also, Ton basically built that analytics.asu.edu portal from scratch. So if you have any questions about the portal or feedback, I gotta plug him there. He's incredible.
Much appreciated. Stephen, do you want to plug the access or contact for your team as well?
For our team, we have if you use our graduate student progress site, if there's any reporting needs, we do have a form you can fill out on one of the tiles that'll go right directly to Zan, Sean, and myself. So if there's any questions or any reports that you guys need, that's an avenue. The other avenue is to work with your graduate college coordinator. I know Janet Duke's on the call. Our presentation is, so her and her team are great resources as well. And we work very closely with each of them. So.
Hi, this is Richard from Thunderbird. I have a little off-topic question, but can you guys tell me where the lead source field that's on the graduate admissions application, what table that's stored in? I would like to pull that information down into our system with our daily application polls if possible.
That I'm I'm not sure. We have to get back. We could get back to you on that one. It might be something we have to pull admission services in for that.
I think, are you talking about the partial app?
Yes.
I think it's, I don't know that it's on the application, but I think it's on the partial app.
Okay, where it asks for the lead source, and it's got like 9 choices, and they're all check boxes.
Or are you talking about the UTMs? There's a whole bunch of things on the UTM on the partial app.
I'm pretty sure it's the full application. I'll put in a email to you guys showing you which fields, and you guys can just reply to me.
Sounds good.